Right cord?
Yeah, they don't
Is it
have
this
them.
one? Okay, great.
They take me out. It's just like in school. They take.
Good morning, everybody.
Morning.
It's good to see all of you. It's exciting to be back in person, and I'm going to go ahead and call the meeting to order. All right. Pledge of Allegiance. Trustee Caroselli, can you lead us in the pledge, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Hey, Madam Clerk. Roll call, please.
Trustee Caroselli,
Here.
Trustee Carey,
Here.
Trustee Chaplin, and Trustee Farahi is absent today. Trustee Gianoli, Trustee Jay,
Present.
Trustee Rose, present. Chair Safraza,
Present.
and Trustee Sperber.
Here.
Moving right along, we'll go to item number 2, public comment. And I don't know, are we doing this by Zoom today as well? Are we doing hybrid?
Yes, we
Do we
are.
have any public comment here in person or any comments from Zoom?
We do have one on Zoom,
Okay,
and I
great.
will, from Patrick Wallace. I'm going to turn on his mic. Patrick, you're able to speak.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, thank you.
Ah, wonderful. Well, first, let me say good morning and thank you to the Board of Trustees for a quick opportunity to talk here at the meeting. I will be as quick as I possibly can. I feel a little bit of obligation to speak up in regard to concession COVID relief, only because I've been responsible for the Parodies Lagardère account at Reno Tahoe for many, many years. And I kind of handed it off in the middle of the crisis to Pamela Brown. So anyway, I just wanted to follow up quickly and say one thing. My understanding is that we're still in a pretty bad way in terms of our financial condition at Reno Tahoe. And I just wanted to make it clear to everybody that while the CARES Act was very generous to airlines and airports and so forth in its award, and including Reno Tahoe, it was intended as a revenue replacement. And concessionaires really didn't get a revenue replacement. We were kind of left to try to negotiate with airports to simply get a reduction of a singular line item on our P&L, which would be the rent piece. The thought of getting profitability replacement but from the government or anyone else was a ludicrous thought. It would have been lovely, but that really wasn't on the table. So with that in mind, we've kind of pled our case, and I would hope that the board would maybe assign one of the trustees or whatever to meet directly with the concessionaires to understand fully the impact that this has had. While there might have been revenue replacement for airlines or airports and so forth, and there will be upcoming relief with Crysta and ARPA, there's certainly not profitability replacement. And we have literally, as a company, borrowed hundreds of millions of dollars to stay afloat. And I would just point out further that there are probably 90% of airports that have abated rent for concessions through all of 2021. And I would love an opportunity to partner with an internal committee with the trust or any way that I could to try to have a comprehensive look at rents as applied in Reno Tahoe. And anyway, that's all I can ask, is just to make that plea. And I appreciate you giving me an opportunity to bring these points to your attention. So thank you all very much. Have a good meeting.
Patrick, before you get off, we have that actually on the agenda for 9/1. So if you could stick around, because I am going to have a presentation on this item. I've gotten a lot of interest from our concessionaires on this. So if you'd like to stick around for 9/1, we'll be hearing this agenda item.
Sure, absolutely. Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Thank you. All right. Any other public comment, Lori?
Not at this time.
Okay. We'll move on to approval of the agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda? Okay, trustee Spurrier.
Richard J, second the motion.
All right, trustee Jay with the second. All those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, approval of the minutes from May 20th, regular board meeting.
Move to approve as presented.
Okay, we have a motion by trustee Rose,
I'll second that.
second by trustee Genoli. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. All right, we have President CEO report with Ted's tips.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Let's go ahead and start with our monthly safety tip from Ted Ohm.
Good morning, Ted.
Morning, Madam Chair, trustees, Mr. Griffin. Here we are, finally, face to face. I'm Ted Ohm, Senior Project Manager for the Airport Authority. Are we ready to get out and start traveling and having fun? Right, so I like to camp. I know a lot of people here and in the audience like to camp. So we also remember back at Thanksgiving and Christmas that we want to keep a 3-foot clearance around stoves and ovens and barbecues for the little guys. We don't want the toddlers to get hurt. We're going to extend this to campfires too also. So if we're lucky enough to have a campfire in a campground somewhere, make sure that it's kept within the fire ring. Make sure that you have a hose, bucket of water, sand, dirt, shovel, something to help put that fire out if it gets out of hand, or at the end of the day, because we all know, thanks to Smokey the Bear, that we don't leave a fire unattended. Also, we can remember from our childhood that if something does happen and an article of clothing catches fire, stop, drop, and roll. So, but maybe camping isn't your thing. Maybe you don't like the bugs or the wild animals running around. So it's poolside, ordering room service. When you check into your room, take the time to look at your fire escape plan for your room, which is typically on the back of the door, and locate your exits. Now, if something does happen and the alarm goes off, there's a couple things you need to do. One, you need to get out quickly, but grab your room card, your key card, and before you open that door, put your hand on that door. Check, see if that door is warm. If that door is warm, you probably shouldn't open it. Go to the window and try to get somebody's attention that you need help. If you open the door and you go out in the hallway, there's smoke. Get down on your hands and knees and crawl to your exit. Once you hit that stairwell, it should be clear of smoke and get out. Now you might ask, well, why grab your key card? Well, when all clear is given, you go back to your room. If you don't have your wallet, your purse, or your key card, you're gonna have to get in line with everybody. And it's, I've been there and done it. It's gonna be a lot of people wanting to try to get back into their room. So that's my safety tips for this month. I appreciate it. And it's good seeing everybody. Thank you.
See you, Ted.
Thank you, Ted. Madam Chair, good morning. We have some really important special recognitions today, so I'm going to make my President and CEO report pretty brief. You all have the monthly report with lots of good information of the work going on across the organization. I do want to call out a few things for you today. First off, as we all saw yesterday, was a pretty exciting day with the announcement of nonstop flights to Austin on American Airlines. That is just further proof of the really incredible recovery that's happening here in our region. In the last 2 weeks, we have been at or slightly above our 2019 passenger levels. Most of the country is averaging about 75 to 80% of their 2019 levels. So we are right at the front of the pack, along with a lot of beach markets, which is where a lot of Americans are going right now. The summer looks to be very, very strong. We're seeing numbers that we certainly didn't expect to see anytime soon. So that is exciting and just further proof that the recovery is really full speed ahead here. One of those things that we've talked about during the course of the pandemic has been the Hertz bankruptcy. Hertz filed for Chapter 11 right around the beginning of the pandemic. And so very happy to report that we have settled all accounts with Hertz. We are all current now, and they are remaining in our market. It will pretty much be business as usual for us and our Hertz customers, which is not the case in every market. As part of their exit from bankruptcy, Hertz is leaving a number of markets across the country. So again, more positive news for our market here and the customer demand that we have. Also happy to report that as we talked about previously, May 22nd was kind of the date for all of our concessionaires to be reopened. We have seen all of them reopen. Ours vary based on staffing availability, which, as you all know, is a huge issue, not only for our concessionaires here, but across the country and in many industries. But it's great to see all storefronts open now at some point, especially during our busy hours, of which we have many now. And so we're just doing everything we can to help them get back staffed to deal with a really busy summer demand. A great opportunity to generate revenue and get things back on track again. So we're excited for that. Madam Chair, that concludes my President and CEO report. Thank you.
All right, now we're going to go to item number 6, actually, board member reports and updates. Trustee Sperber, anything to report?
Nothing to report.
Trustee Giannoli?
Oh.
Right. Trustee Chaplin?
Nothing.
Oh my goodness, you always have the Tahoe report.
Okay. Well, I would say on the heels of the Austin announcement, which was amazing, there was a lot of chatter about that. So congratulations on that. Tahoe is kind of is brimming right now. So it doesn't surprise me that the airport is doing so well. We are looking at a really robust summer, maybe a little bit even more. What I would tell you about the Tahoe Basin with some of our other agencies, we're working together to come up with a sustainable tourism and recreation vision, spending money towards that. And RFP is going out, and the LTVA will participate in that process. Our work later on. And just the event center, I just will tell you, we went vertical this last week. So it's rebar, but it's it's straight up. And that's one of the words that I can use in construction. The rest of it, I sit in these meetings and I have no clue what they're saying, but got the rebar thing down. So yep, we're vertical and on schedule and on budget. Thanks.
Congratulations. Trustee Caroselli, how's Gaiman doing? All right.
Trustee Caroselli, can you speak close to your mic, please?
Oh, you mean you're still here, and I can report that I'm here today.
All right, good. Trustee Jay?
Not so much of a report, but an acknowledgement. And I've said it before, but I want to do it in this public meeting here for everybody. A couple of weeks ago, I had a friend call me up and was flying off to Boston and went through TSA, and his CPAP machine didn't get put back in his bag. So he called me up freaking out about it because he needs it really bad. Well, I called Darren, and within a half hour, it was located and on its way to him. So he had it the following day. So I know he sent a letter to Darren, but Darren being the humble person he is, probably wouldn't share it. But I wanted to acknowledge Darren's effort in getting this. And I think Darren will admit that that letter was pretty nice, but that is what we're here for, to make sure that if we do hit a bump, we deal it immediately and we make sure the outcome is positive. And he was extremely happy. And he happens to be on our list for a hangar once they become available. So win-win. And also, Darren, thank you so much and congratulations on that letter he sent you.
Thank you, Trustee Jay. And I want to acknowledge our airport operations staff. It's great to have people here 24 hours a day, so you can go look for things at any time, day or night. They were on it immediately, and I'm grateful to their fast response. Thank you for the recognition.
Trustee Rowe?
Yeah, I just want to say that on Tuesday during the Finance Committee meeting, we did also have two other people make public comment regarding the concessionaires relief program. So we had a great discussion about that. I also had the opportunity to speak with Ray Wright, who runs the Harley Davidson locations here in Reno. We happen to be in a different business group together, but we were able to have a brief discussion about this program. So I'm very interested to hear the whole board speak about it today. And I assured everyone that spoke on Tuesday that even if we approve this particular package today, that we'll continue to work on this going forward, and that we're very interested and passionate about making sure that we're on board with helping them as much as we possibly can. So I just want to bring that to light.
Vice Chair Carey?
No comments today.
Go ahead and move on to 7.1, which is the Chairman's Outstanding Service Award to the RTAA custodial staff.
Laura, you want to get the certificates? And Gary, would you ask all of our custodial team to come up here to the podium, please?
Good morning. One of the honors of the outgoing chair is the chairman. I'm going to call it the Chairwoman's Award this year for outstanding service. And I got to tell you, this wasn't a hard one for me, because I think this year has been, I think, one of the most challenging years anyway of my lifetime. And in airport, we have to stay open to the public 24/7. We're in operation for many things, including bringing the vaccines here with our cargo, our air service, people traveling, and the whole safety of the airport is top priority. And we talk a lot about that with police and fire and maintenance and our operations. But I think this year has really highlighted the safety of our airport and the "we move you safely" at the Reno Tahoe. And I think to say that slogan is an understatement. I think this year more than ever, "we move you safely" is very important to our traveling public and the operations of the airport. I got to tell you, the custodial staff, it's truly my honor to give you the award this year. So during this entire pandemic, and I talked to your managers and supervisors, I mean, fear to come into work, and you guys came and kept our airport clean day after day. Came in, did your job, fear of your family getting the virus, you were here. And I know every single day you came in, kept our airport clean, came to work, and I just can't tell you how much we appreciate it as an entire board, as an entire community, what you do for us every single day at the airport. From the bottom of my heart, I just want to say thank you. Thank you for moving us safely through Reno Tahoe. Thank you for all that you do for us. And I'm just so appreciative and honored to have you here with us today and for the great work you're doing for the Reno Tahoe Airport. So thank you. Does anyone want to say anything? Would love to hear from any of you. Certificates of appreciation, and also I think there's a little gift in there to show our appreciation from the board, and would love to have a picture with all of you and the board if we could, please. Thank you. We made it.
Wow, very beautiful.
Oh, better.
No, I'm not.
Yeah, like you made it through that.
And that's okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Truck guys.
I say a couple words.
Yes,
I want to
please.
say thank you so much for this recognition. It's very important for my team. I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. CEO, our next recognition, Holly.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. Holly, would you join me up at the podium, please? Okay, Madam Chair, members of the board, it's my pleasure to recognize that Holly Luna, our RTA procurement manager, was recognized as a 2021 Woman of Achievement by the Nevada Women's Fund in late May. While they didn't have their usual gala this year for obvious reasons, they encouraged all of us to celebrate individually with the award winners. And so we held a special luncheon in her honor 2 weeks ago, I think week before last. And so we were really pleased to have Holly join us along with her daughter, Kesha, and really all of her team joined and talked about what a phenomenal person she is, an amazing leader. Had a great lunch, and then we watched their annual presentation on local TV where they go through all the award winners. Holly was on TV briefly for a moment where her picture was up there. It was pretty exciting. And it was just really a tribute. As you all know, the Nevada Women's Fund is a special really recognition unique to Northern Nevada, which is has an amazing history. And I'm really proud of our participation in this award. Even more so, I'm proud of Holly. She's an amazing leader. I've gotten to know her in my less than 1 year here. And as far as leaders go and procurement managers and just really good people, she's right there at the top. We couldn't have a better nominee. So really pleased to share with you that we were able to honor Holly This is her certificate that she's already received, and I'll re-present it to her today for the board. But Holly, congratulations to you for being a 2021 Women of Achievement.
Congratulations, Holly.
Madam Chair, one more special recognition, and this is for Officer Greg Klisch. Is Greg here? Do we know? There he is. Okay, Greg, come join me, please. Madam Chair, I'm pleased to recognize Officer Greg Klisch, who is retiring. And so I'm going to read the write-up here for you all. Officer Klisch joined the Airport Authority as an airport police officer in May 1998 and will be retiring in July 2021. During his 23 years of service to the authority, Officer Klisch has been a valuable, versatile member of the Airport Police Department, taking on many different assignments, including bike patrol officer and instructor, field training officer, defensive tactics instructor, NCIC terminal coordinator, safety committee liaison, coordinator for the police records management system, coordinator for the state uniform crime reporting system, and twice serving as the president of the Airport Police Officers Protective Association. Wow. Officer Klisch has consistently demonstrated his ability to be an adept officer under a variety of conditions and a strong work ethic, as evidenced by what we just heard, and flexibility makes him an invaluable member of the team. Thank you, Officer Klisch, for your service. We wish you the absolute best in retirement. And I just want to say that's an extraordinary amount of service over a 23-year career, not only doing the job, but being one of those people to raise your hand and do all the other special jobs that come along. It's what makes a police department or any other organization operate so smoothly. So Greg, thank you for your service to the Airport Authority. You will be missed.
Officer Klisch, did you want to say anything? Thank you. All right. CEO, we have one of our recognitions today for Trustee Caroselli. Do you want to kick that off?
Absolutely, Madam Chair. Thank you. This is the last meeting for Trustee Nat Caroselli. You know, it's, I know, tradition to honor outgoing trustees, and Trustee Caroselli, I just want to start things off by telling you how much I appreciate the leadership and guidance that you provided me in my first year as CEO. We've had some great conversations about the history, how we got to certain things, your passion for air service. I know our chair will talk more about that, but certainly inspired me early on. And I just want to thank you for your 8 years of service to the organization, for your leadership and your guidance. And I will turn the mic over to our chairwoman. And I believe this is Nat right there.
Paul, we're going to go down to the podium.
To go to the podium?
Uh-oh, podium.
I'm going to start telling the board a story about Trustee Caroselli, because I was thinking about my interest when I applied to be on the airport board. And in my former life as a councilwoman, I think I would go probably monthly to lunch with Trustee Caroselli. And there wasn't a lunch that went by where he wasn't talking about the importance of air service. I want to just talk about what he's done for air service, because everyone in the community, there's a lodging $2 surcharge, actually $3 for some, $4. It's a little complicated, but bottom line is Trustee Caroselli helped put that in place. And why is that important? That's important because part of those funds, the room tax funds, go into the air service budget. in trustee Caroselli, to the tune, I think, of 1.5 million over at the RSCBA goes to help for air service. And if it were not for trustee Caroselli, that was his baby. He pushed that. And today, I mean, yesterday we saw what was it, Darren, in the 92-year history of the airport? What happened?
We have the most number of destinations we've ever had, Madam Chair.
And I think I want to say, I think trustee Caroselli, thank you, because in large part to you, that's why we have the new air service. If it weren't for that fund and being able to use that fund to attract air service to our community, I don't think we would have those numbers that we do today. So thank you so much. And I've got a proclamation from your friend over at the city of Reno that I'll go ahead and read. Whereas Nat Caroselli was appointed to the Reno Tahoe Airport Authority Board of Trustees in July 2013 and quickly ascended to the chairmanship of the board from 2014 to 2015. And whereas during his time as chairman, the RTAA began an impressive air service comeback following the recession. Mr. Caroselli was a passionate air service advocate, championed the effort to bring JetBlue and nonstop service to New York to Reno. And whereas Mr. Caroselli also played a key role in advocating for the creation of an air service marketing fund at the Reno Sparks Convention and Visitors Authority. And whereas Mr. Caroselli was well known among his fellow board members for conducting some of the fastest meetings on record with his direct leadership style. And whereas he served on the Finance Committee, Planning Committee, and as the RTAA's representative to the RSCBA board. And whereas Mr. Caroselli was well respected for his staunch support of air staff and fondness for fast meetings. Now therefore, on behalf of Mayor Hillary Sheevy, Mayor of the City of Reno, Nevada, do hereby officially proclaim Friday, June 11th is Nat Caroselli Day. Please join me. It's yours.
Thank you very much. I think when I got on the board, we were really hurting for air service. And so I just helped. And I think over the 8 years that I've been here, first I want to thank the county commission for appointing me to the board twice. And secondly, I would like to say that I tried to be a good board member. I tried to be help in any way I could. And I tried to be very supportive of staff and stay out of their way because they were doing a hell of a job. And this is a first-class airport. Thank you all very much.
Madam Chair, can I ask Officer Greg Klisch to come back to the podium, please?
Told you, officer, we weren't letting you go.
There you go.
Madam Chair, Lori does everything but physically put these in my hands and I still forget them. Officer Klisch, this is your plaque and your letter. So can we get a picture? Let's slide that way. He's coming back.
No, I want to thank the board and the airport for the long career I've had here. Started in '98 and we had a bump 9/11. Very interesting time. So I've been through a lot of that, seen a lot of changes throughout the years, many board changes, seen many board changes and many chiefs, CEOs. So this airport has been a good job. It's been a wonderful place. I worked with a lot of great people, both upstairs here in the admin and downstairs in my department. And I am excited to see the future with this going, and I wish everybody the best, including Mr. Caroselli, for your your work there, and hope you have a great time when you leave here. So, but thank you all for a great time. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Greg.
Right, we didn't put anything on consent this month because just at the pleasure of the board. Were there any items I'd like to go through? I know 9.1, we're gonna have a presentation. Was there any others? Trustee Caroselli, I know you like fast meetings, so was there any others that you guys wanted to pull for discussion? Or do you want to do a motion for approval of the items on the agenda? So I know 9.1, we're going to have a discussion. Trustee Rose?
We were unable to see, I think it's 9.2, right, Randy? We were unable to see that at the Finance Committee meeting because we had technical difficulties. And so those that were in charge of presenting that information, we're planning to do it here today if that's what you'd like to happen.
Okay, so 9.2, and just probably one question on 9.3. Actually, probably 9.1 through 9.4. So any others that you guys wanted to pull? So can I get a motion for item 9.5, 9.6, 9.7, and 9.8? I think legal counsel, did they have to go through each agenda item?
Yes, please.
Okay, so anyone? I think we had to do them one.
Yeah.
One,
To do them individually.
So move to approve 9.3 Board Memo 2021-06-28 as presented.
Second,
no, we're doing 9.5. We're starting at 9.5.
9.5.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were starting at 9.3. I'm sorry. Move to approve 9.5 Board Memo 2021-06-31 as presented.
Okay, we have a motion by trustee Rose, second by trustee Sperber. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Okay, any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Okay, item 9.6.
Richard J. Move to approve Board Memo 9.6, 2021-06-32.
Okay,
Second.
we have a motion by trustee Jay, second by trustee Sperber. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Okay, item 9.7.
Move to approve item 9.7, Board Memo 2021-06-33.
Okay,
Second.
we have a motion by trustee Janoli, a second by trustee Rose. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Okay, item 9.8.
9.8, Richard J. Move to approve 2021-06-34 with, can we just, one little request, can we get COC on that calendar as well? The COC meetings.
The bylaws only require that you put on the board meetings, so that's why it's on an
Oh,
action
okay. I
item. but
saw
it certainly can
users
be-
on, I saw CEU users on there.
It
so-
can certainly be put on.
Okay.
Okay, so we have a motion and I think trustee Jay made the motion,
Second.
second by trustee Rose. All of this in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
All right. Okay, we're going to go ahead and move some things out of order. In fact, we'll do 9.1 last with the board's indulgence because I think the others will be pretty quick. We'll go through them quickly. So 9.2, I believe we have a presentation. Someone's got to catch up light. So.
Morning, Chair Faraza, trustees, CEO Griffin, Councilor Morgan. Today we have a presentation from our investment consultant, Deanne Woodring. She's a firm of Government Portfolio Advisors. I want to make just a couple of introductory comments and then I'll turn it over to her. There is a substantial amount of content, some complex issues here. We will try our best to keep it brief. to the point. It may take us, 20 minutes to get through this material. Questions along. If you have questions along the way, please ask them. We'll be discussing our investment performance. We have an investment portfolio of about 96 million. It's a fixed income portfolio that contains mostly US Treasury notes and government agency securities. This is an action item before you. We have the investment policy within your board materials, and it does contain some revisions. We are recommending to bring into the list of authorized investments 5 new investment types. I will say from the onset that the investment type are not household names. We will take a little bit of time to describe what they are. I can give you some reassurance that these investment types, such as corporate bonds, are permitted investments by state law and are investments that are utilized by other agencies in the state of Nevada, in particular Washoe County School District, and several other cities. So we are recommending to bring those into the mix of choices that our investment consultant has to work with. So the investment management by GPA, we'll just say that it is a fixed fee type of contract. They manage the 96 million of assets. They work with me practically on a weekly basis where they're recommending the purchase of an investment. It's usually an investment that is maturing, and we're looking at our options for reinvestment. The fee arrangement, to be clear, is that GPA, they're not compensated on transactions. They receive a flat fee. So there's no vested interest in recommending one type of security over another. They are an extension of our fiduciary responsibility as trustees, as the CEO and the CFO. We have that responsibility, and they are our consultant under contract to represent our very best interest. Deanne Woodring is the president and senior portfolio manager of GPA. She has over 20 years experience working with public agencies such as ours, and she's a licensed investment advisor and has over $12 billion of assets under her direct management. We'll first talk about the investment portfolio performance through March 31st. She'll touch on the proposed additions of the new investment types, and then we'll bring it back to the board for a recommendation and action to approve the investment policy, which would go into effect on July 1. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Deanne.
And trustees, it's nice to be here. This is my first board meeting back out. And I have to tell you, it felt very good to fly here and be home. So it's a privilege to be in front of you. we've not actually been in front of you for 2 years. It's very important for the trustees to know these fiduciary changes that we're recommending. And so we want, instead of the finance committee, because we did have technical difficulties, I'm going to go through some of the, I'm going to do high level, and then we'll hit on these policy changes and understanding of those. Oops, which way am I going here? There we go. Okay. So economically, and you also are available to you as our quarterly report. So the way I laid this out was to make sure you all knew what was in our quarterly report and what you should be looking for and looking at. So we do an extensive commentary on some of the key economic elements that are impacting the choices that we have on the investment front. One is overall market yields. Everybody's heard about the Fed Reserve dropping rates. They dropped rates to the floor, which we've been in this environment before, and it's lasted a long time. So our job as your investment fiduciaries is to make sure we have that long-term perspective on your investment program and being able to go through volatile interest rates and try to achieve optimal returns for you at a minimum risk. When GPA was hired in 2017 by the authority, The objective was to be able to control your own destiny in the risk parameters of the investments you were buying. And the two risk areas that we have are average maturity and the types of securities that you're investing in. We're a very conservative manager. We take our time, we take methodical, intentional choices, and we try to establish that strategy for the long run and being able to go through all rates. So down here on the bottom at that 2-year note, that's the sector that we're really buying in. You can see it's dropped from 0.25, not 2.5, 0.25 to 0.16. And it's been very, very low. And the Federal Reserve, we expect to continue to keep them low. Impacts on it are employment and inflation, obviously high in the press right now. We have 8.4 million people unemployed. I just saw we have 9.4 million jobs open. I did a little road trip in my motorhome the other day through Nevada, and there's tons of for hire signs out there, right? There are jobs out there. Is just getting people back to work. And so our timing of when interest rates will change, we are projecting out into 22, 23, just because of the drag on that front end and the numbers we're seeing. Inflation is a big key driver of any changes there, but we're not anticipating hitting above that 3% level. Also, our job as your manager is not to predict. We work within. And so by establishing the strategies that we're doing, we're trying to continue to balance that portfolio and maintain discipline in our choices. I'm going to flash through these. This is kind of the key element. So this is going back to 2018, about the time that we started working with Rtaa. And interest rates were much, much higher. We were actually in a 2% environment. And so what we did is we were able to look at your portfolios and look at your funds and individually track what are those purposes of those funds and how should those be invested. And there's ongoing excess liquidity balances, that reserves, project funds, that type of thing. And we analyzed every fund and identified that there was a component of your portfolio that could be invested out about 1.5 years. We felt the 1.5-year roll period was appropriate. The other options go out to a 2-year, but I still feel like given uncertainties and changes, construction things, that the 1.5 target is about right for the authority. And then it becomes how much should be invested there and what do we need for liquidity. So we had the opportunity, and this is where that discipline, rates are trending up. We went, locked in some rates out there, and those rates are still benefiting the authority today. So we're really excited about those performance numbers. I'm going to pass some of these. These are just some of our graphs. And what we're looking at is what the Federal Reserve is projecting and what the market is projecting. Those two things are kind of what guide us on expectations for future returns. The bottom line out of these graphs are that the market and the Fed are both projecting rates to remain low for a while, and they're kind of converging. At the rate that they're changing are slightly different, but at the end of the day, 22, 23, we're still projecting to be pretty low. So the economy, you're seeing it. We're recovering. We're getting people out on planes. We're starting to travel. I kind of think people will travel more in the US than traveling more. So you'll continue to see those numbers. So we're trying to recover, but it's kind of still in pocketed areas. I know the convention centers are still, we're keeping our fingers crossed for convention centers to be able to come back and get that travel and the hotel tax. Inflation is still out there. We saw some strong numbers that just came in. And a lot of that is like recovery of rental cars or recovery in certain things that got hit so much. So we're trying to get through that number to see where the inflation really is. Although my coffee this morning was $7.50. So I go, well, that's a little bit high for a cup of coffee. So there is inflation. I do take a 4-shot Americano, but it was a little high. And then labor markets, getting our economy healed, getting us back to work. So those are the components that we're looking at that impact interest rates. And it's all about managing expectations for you. And so what you should be expecting is that your earnings numbers are going to come down because we're having to reinvest in a lower rate. But we also want to know, are we using every tool that we can in a low risk appropriate way to make sure that we're optimizing your returns? So this is a high level of the portfolio structure. There's about 36 million that we've identified and has been in short. Right now, it's mainly in the LGIP state pool. That is what we identify as liquidity ongoing. And then there's about 59 million that's invested in the core component. The overall average earnings rate on the portfolio is 0.88. And your average maturity is close to 1 year. 1 year, 1.25 year for overall balances for public entities is the appropriate number that we see across the nation. And so we're very balanced. And then it's in your asset allocation choices. So you have about 23% in the pool, 46% in agencies, 16% in treasuries, and some in bank deposits. So it's this asset class area that when we go to policy, we're looking to expand our choices to be able to diversify the portfolio a little bit better in our alternatives. This is the balances. So obviously coming into the pandemic, there was a lot of uncertainty. What are your balances going to look like? And so the decision was made to shift a little bit more to the liquidity balances over that period of time. There was two reasons for that. One, the uncertainty, but two, the fact that you were getting a higher rate in the pool than where we were able to invest because of those 0.12s and 0.15s. And that worked out very well. Now we're getting a shift again. The pool has come down in rates, which you'll see in a moment. And now we want to look at adding more now that you're more confident in what's happening here and open again. We'll look to shift some of that over. So those are one of the tactical decisions that Randy and I work on, and looking how much should stay liquid, how much should be invested, and what are our alternatives. So these are actual fund balances. This is all your money put together of all the different funds. And so I just wanted to, you always have a dip. You have revenue flows that are higher versus lower. And then your earnings and income is coming down overall, and your yields are coming down overall. This is important because as a board, you want to make sure that your portfolio is trending the way it should. If I came in and you were at 2% instead of lower, you would all be saying, what are we investing in? The market's not 2%. So it's knowing where the market is and what you should be achieving that keeps everything right and question and check. So we're very diligent in reporting out and saying, yeah, rates are lower. It's not what we're doing. It's just where the market is. And you need to be aware of that for your oversight purposes. This is a longer balance that we picked up back when we started. We went 3 years. So you can see that there was substantial growth here at the authority between 2015 to where you are today. It started out overall balances of about 60 million, and you're into today at 94 million. That's partly project funds and that's partly growth, but you've leveled. You didn't grow the last couple of years, which would be expected. Earnings on the portfolio, fiscal year is coming up at June 30th. So about $836,000 is the earnings level. Last year, that number was 1.4 million. And that's just because of that reinvestment component, and they're coming down, but we're still achieving almost $1 million. So, and that's because of the diversification in the portfolio. We were pretty active. There were about 19 million in maturities and calls that we reinvested and made the purchases on, and there were no sales over the fiscal year. Performance-wise, so we manage the portfolio to a benchmark. It's very important that we're accountable to the risk parameters that we've established. So far, the trailing year, we're ahead by about 28 basis points, and we'll be ahead of the benchmark through the end of the year. Again, same thing. You don't want to see us performing at 2% above the performance levels, because that means we're doing something that we didn't articulate. So we should be plus or minus 25 basis points. Hopefully it always a plus. This is just some wording that you can go back and look at. This is also in the quarterly report. It tells about what the strategy and our discipline is within the markets, and then specifically what we've adjusted on for the authority's portfolio, mainly that yields are trending down. The portfolio does have about 600,000 in unrealized gains. What the unrealized gains does is allow us flexibility. If we do want to shift the portfolio, we can actually profit from the investments that we did. That's because yields are lower than where you purchased them. Compliance report wise, we're very diligent on our compliance report. And this is important because this ties to your policy that you're going to be reviewing. So we have an online client portal that your team is able to tap into. We put all of the rules that you put in for your policy every day. We have a compliance report that generates out and looks at where your portfolio is, and you're compliant in all areas. They're both diversification rules, and there's maturity rules, hard maturity rules that we put in that tie to policy and tie to statute. So that is in there. And then to the policy. So with that, is there any questions before we get into the policy discussion?
Is this standard for the rate of return for these kind of investments? It just seems so low to me. 96 million in cash, and you're getting, I mean, does it allow us the policy, the statute to invest in ETFs or stocks, or is it just, this is purely money market, corporate bond investments?
You're not able to do equities, and you're restricted by statute, and you're restricted in maturity as well as restricted in the types of securities. Your policy today is more conservative than other policies. The statute changed in 2019, and that's what we're proposing to bring forward. But we still are in a very low rate environment. And so that's what we're articulating. And everybody's asking this, everybody's challenged. That's why I'm glad to be here in front of the board, because that's what everybody's going, how come we can't invest in these other things? And it's because it's public money, and it's because they have very strict rules across it. We're recommending, I purposely didn't move you into these assets. It wouldn't have added that much additional earnings. We'll talk about that before, but we're recommending this to kind of, it came out in 2019. We talked about it bringing forward in 2020, and there was just so much out there. But it would have added a little bit, but not tremendously a lot. It's just, we're in that low rate environment.
So how does our rate of return compare to other governmental agencies throughout Washoe?
You're right in line with it. You're actually probably a little above it. I somehow missed my slide on, I don't know if I can go back to it. That showed the components. So let me, there. Okay. So the investment component is actually earning a 133. The pooled component is earning a 0.15. So up above, we have 60 million that we've locked in and held up at 133. Again, that's low, right? In our heads, that's low, but I showed you that graph, and that's the choices. It's consistent to how the county's managing their money, the school districts manage their money. Doing this core liquidity component is a traditional model for public entities. I'm very active in that myself, my company is. So it is what it is. And it's hard. There's not, we don't want, the more yield you go out to try to capture, if you're trying to capture yield, the more risk we're putting on the portfolio. And it's just, it's where markets are.
Kaplan?
Yeah, just one, thank you. One quick question. How does this compare to the LGIP if you were to invest, if you were just to?
If you had it all in the LGIP. So I didn't run the actual numbers, but I certainly can run that and say, if all your money had been in the LGIP, you're substantially better off by having your portfolio diversified. That yield right now is at the 0.15 and or 133. And I can't do that math in my head for the year period.
I was pretty sure of that. I just wanted to ask the question.
And that's, how would we have done versus if we had done nothing, right? So I'll run those numbers for you, because it will be a pretty big number in today's rate environment.
Okay.
Yeah, kind of following up your question, one of the toughest challenges we have right now in financial planning is getting yield in this ultra low market. You've got institutional, and you know where I'm coming from, money markets that are paying 0.02%, and that's to their higher end people right now. There is a risk return. The more return you get, the higher risk we're going to take. So that's a really tough balancing act. Now we know probably, theoretically, hypothetically, we'll start seeing a rise in interest rates next year. I don't really, unless you disagree with me, but I don't think we'll see anything this year. But once those rates start to move up, I know with the duration of 0.97, we'll have those maturities starting to come in. We'll be able to reinvest at the higher rates.
Correct. And that's how we're positioning the portfolio. So we have dollars rolling off so that we can roll that up into the structure. But yeah, it is. And you're doing about a little better, I would say, than most entities because of that locked in amount that we have. Could we have more over there? Could we? Yes. We could have had your liquidity down at 15 million, but that's also a diligent choice. Your policy, safety, liquidity, and return. So those are the orders that we balance it in.
I was just going to follow up on that. I mean, it's hard whether it's your own money or watching this, how low these rates are. But I think what you're doing in that, you're anticipating maybe these things are going to get better, and you're keeping yourself in a position where you can move when the time is there. And I appreciate that. So I think it's good that we have this constant eyes on it, and you work with Randy in it. I think when we were in 2017, when we went ahead with this, that was a smart move, particularly in the world we live in now. So I appreciate it.
And I will run those numbers because it'll be interesting against the pool. But yeah. So within policy, what we're recommending, the statute changed in 2019. Now in the state of Nevada, there's a couple levels of statute oversight. The state runs an invest program, which allows entities to plug into their investment managers. GPA is one of those managers, and we have been since 2008. You also can have a manager outside of that allows you to go into additional asset classes, and we're registered as the manager within the state. Supranationals, corporate bonds, foreign bonds, collateralized mortgage obligations, and asset backs were all added to allowable securities in 2019. Now there's limits on what you can do. So out of that 50, almost 60 million, we would be targeting to add 20% in corporates. The incremental earnings on these portfolios because of those limits would really come out to be about 5 to 8 basis points on the portfolio, but still that's 5 to 8 basis points on a lot of money and things that we want to be able to drive from that. So we're proposing for the authority to add those allocation types. We're very astute at being able to manage those types of asset classes. They're all very high quality rating. In addition, we're having trustee mentioned that the spread compression, everybody's chasing the same dollars. So the banks have huge capital out there and they're buying everything they can, which means that our spread relationships of these assets are very, very tight, but we still can add, and that's what we want to be able to do. So supranationals are global or securities that are owned by, they're like World Bank, International Finance Committee. The US is the largest owner in those co-op groups of securities. Corporate securities, they have to be US domiciled. They have to be AA rated or single A rated. We would keep you more in the AA rated space. Foreign government and corporate bonds, we will be focusing on government, AAA rated corporate issues and be very agile in that market. Collateralized mortgage obligations and asset-backed securities have collateral of loans behind it again, we're very diligent and you have to be in the AAA space on those securities. It just allows us more choices and more opportunities to work within the portfolio. We also apply a tactical, so those of you who are on retirement boards track this, but we will apply a tactical range band for each of the asset classes and report to Randy where we are and why we're in that zone. So we would move into those asset classes slowly, but be able to optimize the balance of those. And this report will be in his quarterly report each quarter. So I wanted to just touch on diversification real quickly for you and why diversification is beneficial for us. So this is each year, each of those asset types, and you can see that they all don't do the same performance in every single period. If we go to 2018, the corporates performed at 169, the treasuries performed at 158. When I look at that, I would have rather had treasuries and corporates because I didn't gain that much out of corporates. If you would be in 2019, the corporates performed at 464 versus a 355. That's the time we wanted to have corporate exposure. So we're not going to be able to time these exact perfect times to be in those, but just being able to participate in those asset classes actually is reducing a risk-adjusted return because we will have assets that do well when assets don't do well. And that's just a fundamental part of investments. And that's why we're proposing it. I also went back to 2008, which was our blow up year. Blow up, that's probably not a good term, but when spreads blew out and we had the crisis and we still had positive returns across the board on all assets. So diversification is important, both in maturity and asset class choices. Over the last year, and this is a very challenging year period, and it's a little high because March 2020, when the pandemic started, spreads got very, very wide. So the performance of those assets, credit assets, did very, very well. So if we had deployed this last year, the portfolio would be ahead by $1 million. If we had deployed that over the last 3 years, it would have only been 300,000. That's because this year was a dramatic year. So this is how we analyze and decide, yes, this is a quality asset class to be putting into the portfolio. And that is it. Did you want me to go? Do they have the memo for the policy, Randy? No. Okay. Great.
Thank you, Dan. Are there any questions from the trustees? If we will move to the recommendation. Otherwise.
Go back to what we made last year, actually dollar wise.
So roughly, the interest income on the portfolio generates, between $750 to $1 million of income. Is a substantial revenue source, and are pursuing yield with the additional securities that we're recommending today. But we're also doing it in a way to where we're giving the portfolio manager more choices because there aren't as many choices as there used to.
And what's the fee for the management fee for the airport?
It's a fixed flat fee of 38,000 per year.
You have a recommended motion, Randy? and we'll-
Quickly getting to that slide. There we go. The staff recommendation is that the board move to adopt the investment policy for the Rtaa Airport Authority effective July.
Move to approve. Second.
We have a motion by trustee Gianoli, second by trustee Chaplin. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, any opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you. It's good to see you. And I'm going to catch a plane at 11. So
Thank you.
Safe trip.
Okay, 9.3. And I know you guys discussed this at finance, just a quick question on the cybersecurity. What are we insured for under this policy?
Morning, Madam Chair, trustees. For the record, Alex Kovac, Manager of Finance. To answer your question, it's a $5 million insurance policy for cybersecurity.
Okay, and what does that exactly cover? Like the tech piece, does it cover like, hey, the operation shutting down? I just needed a little more detail on that particular piece.
Covers any kind of cyber attacks, based on my knowledge, and I can provide you more detail on that, exactly to what it covers in more detail than just,
Okay, do we have anyone?
Broker on.
We have the broker on, Mr. Brad Meinhardt with
Okay,
Arthur J. Gallagher. Should be on the Zoom
Okay,
call
thank-
if.
Madam Chair, is your question whether they cover loss of revenue?
yes.
Is that the
That's a
exact
big
question?
important thing right now, so I want to get the details and I didn't see it in the actual policy itself, so I don't know if we can get that addressed.
yes, Mr. Meinhardt has been promoted. He needs
What's
to,
his name, Lori?
Brad Meinhardt.
Brad Meinhardt.
Brad, I'm
and
not sure if you can
he-
hear us.
He needs to unmute.
Brad?
There he is.
Hi there, it's Brad Meinhardt. We can give you a complete summary of the coverage, but it covers your liability to third parties for damage done with your IT systems. It covers the recovery of your systems as well. So it's basically turnkey coverage to cover the authority for liability for any personal information that is compromised associated with your operations, and in-depth coverage to bring you back to normal and all of the associated costs in trying to recover your systems.
What about revenue loss?
Has a small impact there, but it's associated with getting your systems back up to where they were, the cost of extortion and the costs of third-party liability. It is not intended to cover your lost revenue.
Okay, do we have a policy that does that? Is there a stopgap policy or supplemental to this, Alex, that staff's looked at?
Have business interruption policy that is part of our property insurance.
Okay, but does that cover a loss due to cyber?
It does not. A property BI coverage requires an occurrence, in other words, a fire, property damage that would actually trigger the claim for bodily injury. It does not cover the financial impact of cyber liability because it's not actually a physical damage.
Is there that type of insurance?
For cyber liability, we'll look into that for you.
Okay. And I appreciate that. That's, one of my big, and if we have to do a supplemental to this, I'd be curious to know what those rates are. I think that's important in this day and age, with cyber security, that we're fully insured for that, if there was a cyber attack. So, did any other board members have questions?
I was just going to mention that we had a discussion at finance, and we're going to bring this back to the board just as an item to discuss where we are. Are we covered enough given the world we live in right now? I think everybody's more than, cognizant of the things that can happen.
Madam Chair, if I may, and that conversation was in reference to our actual cyber protection. So what we're doing to protect our systems from a cyber, not so much insuring them, but the actual software that we're using and what the tools are in place to protect ourselves. So we will bring that back for.
The magnitude of your offsite storage and the ability to get things back up quickly. I'm not exactly sure, and I probably don't need to know, it's too in the weeds, but I'm not exactly sure what types of revenue streams would be most affected by a cyber attack, right? So because we're different, most people log on to southwest.com to book their flight, not the airport. So I'm not even 100% sure about the relationship between the two, but I think it's a great information to have and understand more.
I would like research done on that. I'll tell you how it could affect us if our facilities went down. I mean, we saw this with the gas situation. I just think we may have to look at, and I'm glad finance did this, our different policies to see what, if there is that type of coverage. I mean, we're a public facility, people count on us for, we're a huge economic component of this region, whether it's cargo. So I just, I think we probably should bring this back. I'm comfortable approving it today, but if we have to have some supplemental, Alex, if we could put this on a future agenda as well, I'd like to see the different coverages in particular for that. And and I don't know if finance has any update on if they were comfortable with our other insurances. So Trustee Rose, you had mentioned.
Yeah, I think the only one we went into further discussion about was the cyber insurance. I think that we're comfortable, but just to clarify, if we approve this today and we do more research on certain things and we want to make changes, we would have the ability to do so. Is that correct?
It is correct. And we would add additional insurance to what we're approving today. And I can do the research, look at potentially covering any kind of revenue loss, see what other airports are doing and report back to the board on the findings of that research.
I'd certainly love to know what other airports are doing, but really, I guess if I was going to make a recommendation to spend more on additional insurance, I personally would want to have a better understanding of if our system was to get attacked. We utilize so many other companies and so many other systems. I would need to understand the relationship between what's at risk versus how much does it cost. And I don't have a clear understanding of that today.
And this is Brad again. We'll make that an absolute priority. And after our earlier meeting this week, we already have that in process to look at higher limits, but we'll get more explanation. And we actually have specialists in the cyber field that do nothing but this for a living. And so we will make it an absolute priority.
And Brad, just to follow up on Trustee Rose's question, by approving this today, we wouldn't be prohibited from making changes or additions to the policy, or are we locked in?
Never prohibited from making changes.
Okay.
You can always make changes and additions. Absolutely.
All right. Thank you. Do we have a motion? I see Art. Did you want to say anything?
No.
Okay.
That'd be Art.
Way back there.
All right, so sorry. So do we have a motion?
Move to accept the motion as presented.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries unanimously. Item 9.4. Thank you, Alex. I just, the only reason I pulled this because our GA community has been pretty vocal about doing this, and I just want to really compliment staff. So if you just want to give like maybe a minute or two of what you all are doing, I think it's great news. We don't need a full presentation, but just to let the public know what you're doing here.
Sounds great. Good morning, Chair Rose and trustees. For the record, Adam Tennant, Journal Aviation Property Specialist. And I also have joining me our good partner in this endeavor, Brad Cost, Stellar's Chief Operating Officer. So this has been kind of a 9-year plus in the making deal. We looked at when we inherited these hangars back in 2010, we really started to look at ideas for what to do with them and what the path forward was with them. It's funny going from talking about cybersecurity, these hangars were built in the 1960s. So it's kind of major change in issues and things to consider. But given the age and the state of the pavement out there, for us to be able to get the 9 additional hangars back online, it's going to require some significant investment. And it wasn't something that we wouldn't consider, but we weren't able to recover the cost because of the agreement we made when Stellar came on board due to their hangars that they will be bringing online on the east side to not compete against them and essentially increase capacity too much, because at the time we really didn't anticipate demand growing so much. So Stellar's been a great partner in this. To be able to start an FBO in February of 2020 and still be full speed ahead with their new development on the east side, and to be making an investment onto existing structures and facilities. It's a really good thing. And they jumped at the opportunity to do this. We presented it to both Atlantic Aviation and to Stellar, and Atlantic wasn't interested, and that's just fine. They have their own special lines of business and things like that they prioritize. And Stellar has a lot of experience with general aviation and T hangars and different things like that. So that's kind of the gist. The target here is to have them if the motion goes through, to have them assume control on July 1st. It'll be a 20-year deal with a 10-year agreement with 2 5-year options, and then it'll keep those hangars online for quite a long time. We had a very good conversation with the users committee on Monday night, and they had a couple of concerns that we were able to address basically on the spot, and we updated our term sheet. Stellar was very agreeable to those minor changes that came through. Basically, it was capping the rent at 5% for 2 years for the first, well, a year for the first 2 years. And then just some prioritization on who can stay. If they want to stay on the west side hangars, as long as we're leasing them, they can stay there if they're currently there. And then they also have the first right to move into the new hangars when they're constructed in a couple of years on the east side. So a lot of variation in this, and I'm glad to have a good partner and Stellar with it. So happy to answer any questions or run through any of the slides.
Is Stellar here today?
Yep.
Oh, if we can have him come up.
Morning, Madam Chair. How are you?
Good morning. I just wanted to say thank you. You guys have come into the market and done a stellar job. Really. And I think, and Trustee Jay, I know you've worked very hard with the users committee, and I just think this is great for the main campus here at Reno Tahoe, and those hangars sure could use some updating. So I appreciate the partnership we have with you all at Stellar. And any board members have questions? Trustee Jay?
I had a question, Brad. Would you, I've received a number of calls this week from GA people, and they're very happy, but Brad, and I was blown away because I know it's been increasing, but would you tell the board how many people we have on the waiting list now and that you vetted them?
It would be my pleasure. And thank you very much for your kind words. We are very, very pleased to be here. It was a tough year for everybody. Couldn't have picked a worse time to start an FBO if I tried. But through our partnership and through the support of the local community, specifically the GA community, they've kept us in business and we have done very, very well. We're extremely pleased. Our timelines for construction are going full speed ahead. So we're excited about everything. But one of the things that's incredible about this particular market is we now have a waiting list that climbs every day, but it's 63 aircraft for T hangars alone. In addition to that, we have for the VLJ market, the very light jets and the Pilatus type, single engine turboprop market. We have about 15 of those aircraft that are waiting on hangars right now. In addition to that, we have another 20 that are waiting on tie downs. So if you add all of that demand up, we're nearing 100 people with aircraft that want to base in Reno that we have to get the facilities online for. So this particular item that we're discussing today is going to give us some more capacity. It's going to give us some relief to that waiting list and to the people that have been on this list waiting for many, many years. And then in addition to that, we're going to go full speed ahead with adding another 30 hangars in the new development that we're going to be doing on the other side of the airport. So it's a great opportunity. And it's one that I haven't seen in 30 years of doing this type of demand. And I think it says a lot about this, the local economy, the economic engine of this airport itself, and how valuable your real estate has become over time. So we're excited about it. Love the GA community at the airport. We want to help them grow, and we've gotten to know everybody and tried to solve some pretty complex issues for them. And we were able to take over the management of the T hangars, and through that, we've got nothing but really good reviews from everybody, and we've been able to maintain them and keep them fixed. We've got a very good knowledge of what it's going to take to get these 1960 hangars up to where they need to be, so to speak, to get them online. But being in the desert and the community that we're in, it does preserve some of the metals and some of the other products that are out there. It gives them a little bit longer shelf life than you would get in some of the coastal communities around the United States. So we're comfortable with this process, and we're excited about it. So I'll answer any questions if I can, but I wanted to thank you all for your support.
Oh, I just wanted to echo, we had a good presentation, a lot of really great information on the Finance Committee, and it's just a win-win. Appreciate everybody on our side of the house that was involved in Stellar. So look forward to the partnership.
Yeah, they did all the heavy lifting. I'm just here to support.
We'll get a motion from the board. Who would like to make it? Trustee Jay?
Move to accept the motion as presented.
Right.
I'll second that.
Right. Trustee Gianoli with the second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none, motion carries unanimously. Congratulations. All right. I think we're at 9.1. Corey, do we have the gentleman from public comment earlier?
Yes, and we also have Pamela Brown.
I'm ready. I was just waiting. Maybe we just take maybe a 1-2 minute. I don't know. I know trustees first. Okay, let's just wait one moment if you wouldn't mind.
Lori, if I might add, Debbie Moore may also be on. And I don't believe Aileen Martin, but Bernice Matthews may be joining via Zoom.
I don't see Debbie.
Go ahead. Good morning, Madam Chair, trustees, President Griffin. My name is Shauna Carpenter, Concessions Manager here with the Airport Authority. I'll be presenting the concessions relief plan. And as we've just mentioned, I believe we have Pamela Brown, Vice President of Development for Parodies, as well as Patrick Wallace. And I think Debbie Moore may be with Pam. And again, Aileen Martin, I had a schedule conflict today, but Bernice Matthews might be joining in case you see those names. And if you are on there via Zoom and are not pushed through, you can use the chat to let us know that you're on there. So the purpose of this relief is to provide support to concessionaire partners and alleviate the financial challenges while extending hours of operations to ensure our passengers have a positive travel experience. As you can see outlined here, this relief plan is in 3 parts. So first, there's a temporary deferral plan for Parodies and SSP. This is for deferral of their minimum annual guarantee monthly installments beginning March of 2021 through December of 2021. This is an estimated deferral of just under $490,000. Second, to reduce the monthly concession fee or gross revenue payments required by our local airport concession disadvantaged enterprise or ACDBE operator, Summit Travel. This is for July of 2021 through June of 2022 with a minimum estimated impact of just under $57,000. And finally, to approve the Coronavirus Response and Relief Supplemental Appropriation Act allocations, which we will refer to as Crysta. This includes just over $463,000 for in-terminal concessionaires and rental car operators. The relief recommendation is in support of RTAA strategic priority number 6 to provide a positive environment and experience for all. So I'll go through a bit of the background here and share some of our previous relief efforts. The impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic began impacting all of us and our concessionaires in mid-March when we saw a drastic decline in passengers and air service. This was followed by local and state mandates to close locations or implement strict operational requirements. And as a result, we began receiving requests for deferrals, waivers, and other relief efforts. So as you see here, the initial relief effort was for a 90-day deferral period. This was approved by the board in April of 2020. And again, 90-day deferral for airline landing fees, terminal rents, rack, and in-terminal concessionaire MAGs. This deferral plan was for approximately $3.9 million. And all concessionaires who did, or concessionaires and operators who did take advantage of this are have fully repaid these deferrals or have amounts due to them as part of their annual account review and true-up process. At that time, the authority also began being flexible with hours of operations and those closures. This obviously was a result of many company directives. We also identified additional temporary storage space for rental car operators to store their excess vehicles free of charge at that time as well. The next round was specific for in-terminal small business operators, and this was for MAG waivers for July through July of 2020 through December of 21. That was part of the budget update in August of 2020 and then extended by CEO Griffin in March of this year. Subway and Fuel Rod have been taking advantage of this MAG waiver and paying % of gross only. In terms of the small business relief, this later included a 50% space reduction for Summit Travel. This began in November of 2020 and was updated to include 100% rent waiver for May effective May through December of this year. We'll go over a little bit more details with that later in the presentation. But please note that the space agreement that we reduced rent on is the only direct lease that the authority has with Summit Travel, since Summit Travel is a subtenant of Parodies. So the original impact with this small business relief was estimated at 28,000 when we first considered it in August of last year. But based on passenger levels and concessionaire performance exceeding what we expected, the updated impact, including the MAG waivers and the rent waiver, is now updated to about estimated at 22,000. So the next one was approved on November 12th of 2020, and this was for a reduction to Parody's monthly MAG installments. This, as you can see here, there was a cap of 150,000. There were three parts. So the earliest occurrence of meeting that 150,000 in planning passengers equaling or exceeding 75%, or June 30th of 21 at the latest. The amount was applied to cover the reduced MAGs for November of 2020 through February of 21 when the amount was used in full. And it's important to note that all MAG installments for concessionaires were reinstated of March based on the passenger levels and that threshold. So as you can see, the March 2021 enplanements were a little over 26% above March 2020. So when we consider those MAG abatement provisions per contract, they were all reinstated for all concessionaires that did have that included. So with the reinstatement of these MAG obligations, we did begin receiving additional requests for relief. And that is why we are here today. The actually, it looks like I added another slide. This might be the one that was in the committee folder, but I did have a summary of the relief just for a visual, that these shorter term quarterly relief decisions have benefited us in that we've been able to really evaluate the impacts of the pandemic and make more informed decisions as we move forward. So as I just went over, there's been 4 rounds of relief considerations to date. We're here now with the 5th. This will include the MAG waivers, reduction for Summit Travel, and the Crysta Allocations. We already know we will be back to the board probably in August with the next round of federal relief. And so the conversation does not end here. As we have more information to help inform those decisions, we'll continue to engage and make sure that's brought to everyone's attention. And again, this approach has been on a quarterly basis and helped us really evaluate the situation as it evolves in order to properly respond. So in making all of the decisions and recommendations, there are some critical considerations that we've had to keep in mind. First, our goal has been to maintain airline rents and charges through the course of the pandemic. So per the terms of the airline agreements, it is our obligation to maintain non-airline revenues. This is why most of those concessionaire agreements do include minimum annual guarantees so we can ensure revenue. Additionally, some in-terminal concessionaires did have MAG waivers or reductions per their agreements built in. So we've obviously kept that in mind, also acknowledging that there are various tenant types and the changing passenger trends have impacted recovery for our tenants in different ways. As a reminder, with the previous relief, that has all been covered by the RTAA, so not reimbursed by federal funds. These have been offset by other non-airline revenues that did exceed budget early on. For example, public parking did help to balance out the last round of relief. As part of all relief considerations, reopening and extending hours of operations has also been a priority and a requirement. Obviously, we all need to make sure that our travelers have a positive experience and that we have adequate concession offerings. So next we have federal relief funds to consider. The current round of Crysta differs again from previous CARES funds. That up until now, the funds were only able to be used to recover operational expenses. So this means that there were not federal funds specific for concessionaires until Crysta. So moving on to Crysta, it was signed into law on December 27th of 2020, and the RNO specific amount for relief is $463,098. There has been extensive guidance from the FAA related to these eligibility requirements and guidance on how these funds are to be administered and allocated, but I've outlined a few of the key components here. So first, the specific funds are intended for direct in-terminal operator, airport concessionaires or operators, including rental car operators. These allocations to eligible operators are to be determined on a baseline period. So this means all rents and fees paid to the airport at a pre-pandemic normal period. We'll get into a little bit more detail on how that is determined, but the FAA has specific guidance on how we determine the allocations. The guidance also includes requirements to focus on ACDB operators, but this is in the case that the ACDB operator is a direct lessee of the sponsor or airport, which in our case, our Parodies Summit Travel is a subtenant of Parodies, and McDonald's is an ACDB operator under SSP. So we do not have direct concession leases with them. Therefore, in this round of federal relief, there is not a mechanism to provide funds directly to the subtenants. Another part of it is that concessionaires are required to remain a going concern, which means that they are expected to remain operating. They must be willing and able to provide minimum acceptable services. And the RTAA expanded on this to require all concessionaires to open per their contractual obligations by May 22nd. This was to prepare for the increase in passengers, which we were expecting to and did see. Although staffing shortages, as we've mentioned a few times today, have been posing an additional challenge, all concessionaires have made significant progress and continue to make efforts to extend their hours. The requirement through the FAA does specifically exclude concessionaires from receiving the Crysta allocation if they've received a second draw from the Small Business Act. This is the act that includes the Payment Protection Program, or PPP. And finally here, the airports are permitted to retain a 2% admin fee from the allocated funds, which we do not intend to take. I have a slide on the actual breakdown coming up, but first we'll note that the next round of federal relief through the American Rescue Act of 2021, or ARPA, was signed into law on March 11th of this year, but the airport allocations have not been released. It is expected that this round will include a larger amount of funds for concessionaires than Crysta. In fact, the full bucket of money for concessionaires is four times the amount of what Crysta was. So there is additional monies in this next round. Unfortunately, I haven't had time to update the slide since the guidance just came out since we've been sitting here today. So we do have some new information, and it did confirm that it is 4 times the amount. There are some variations in how the funds are to be allocated and eligibility. So we'll have to work through that to figure it out. But the specific allocations for airports was not part of the release today, unfortunately. So we'll have more information hopefully soon on that. Knowing all of this is obviously a key factor in any additional relief efforts. So not only do we not know the allocation, who will qualify for this, but it is obviously critical information to have before we move forward with any relief efforts beyond what we are recommending today. When we look here at the Crysta allocations, this includes the breakdown. Again, this the percentages you see are determined from actual revenues they paid to the airport during a pre-pandemic period. So these exact figures are based on the first quarter of 2020, which was the last quarter per the FAA that could be used. And we've taken a look at different periods to see if, performance changed or varied, but it was pretty, regardless of what period of time pre-pandemic we took, it didn't change the percentage breakdown much.
Yes.
Could you expand a little bit about the?
Yes.
Is their volume down in terms of their transactions? Heard anecdotally that a lot more people were renting cars to get a safer motor.
Sure. There has been a shortage of vehicles, so that's impacted some of the challenges they've been seeing. There has definitely been more of a demand and an increase in pricing. It varies. So looking at the first calendar quarter, so January of 2020 versus this year, 2021, where passengers were down 37%, the rental car operators varied. So some of them exceeded what passenger levels were down, and others are down somewhat equivalent or even more to what passenger levels are. So there's not really consistency across all operators, but they definitely are seeing more of a demand.
Would you characterize that as they had impacts, but not as severe as the retail side?
They had impacts. I don't know if I would categorize it as severe, but different impacts. So at the beginning, they got rid of a number of cars, not knowing that there would be challenges to recoup their fleets. So they not only are challenged with the staffing challenges that everyone else has, but they have shortages in their fleets and are challenged to meet that demand, for not that they don't want to, but because there's other factors that are contributing to the inability to do so.
But is it fair to say that the retail folks had a very different experience than rental cars? One appears to have maintained stability, the other has suffered the direct loss of passenger impacts because there's not enough buyers.
Absolutely. Yes, I would not disagree with that. And through the FAA guidance for the Crysta allocations, it has specifically required that we do include our rental car operators. And I didn't get to that point in the guidance that came out today, but that could differ in the next round. But absolutely, you're
better lobbying.
I think that's an important point, Vice Chair Carey, because they sold their cars. I don't know if anyone's tried to rent a car lately. I mean, short-sighted on their part, I'm sorry. And now if you have a cost, I mean, I think our percentage of, I forgot what the fee is called, Mr. CEO, but it's actually rising because of the costs of renting a car. So I don't know what that's done to the revenue of the airport, but it's very challenging to rent a car right now. Trustee Jay.
Darren, I know you and I talked about, would you share with everybody approximately how much of the inventory that the car rental agency sold off?
Well, thank you, Trustee Jay. I was listening in on an airport director Zoom week before last, and they had the president of the American Rental Car Association on, who confirmed that in January of 2020, they owned 2 million rental cars. And in the first quarter of the pandemic, they sold, I think, 750,000 of them. So a huge liquidation, which they defend because they needed liquidity in order to continue. But I think what we've seen at a lot of airports is when you lose 50, 60, 70, 80% of your passengers, rental car transactions do go down, right? That's a lot less people renting cars. Passengers are back now. Fleets are extremely constrained. And so what you pay for one car is a lot more than you would have pre-pandemic. So we're getting a revenue kind of return on that. There's a serious capacity issue there. And I think what airports are expecting, and I don't know if it was confirmed in the FAQs this morning, is that the ARPA funds will exclude rental cars. So it's 4 times as much money that's going just to the internal concessionaires, unless something has changed behind the scenes that we're not aware of. That is the industry expectation. I mean, it could change, but Congress did that because when you look at rental car revenue, it's like never has been before, because you're paying $100 a day for a economy car, right? No matter where you're at. I mean, you can look at any market right now, and when you look in our lobby, you would have seen at times lines at the budget group and no line at enterprise. And when you go ask them, it's because they simply don't have any cars to rent. And there's no lines. And where the others might have had some cars, you have some walk up traffic. So it's an extraordinary situation, to be sure, and tough to wrap your head around what it all means, but thank you.
Okay, a couple other notes on this. All concessionaires were required to certify eligibility, and Swift or Zoom, our main vending operator, was not eligible since they did receive PPP funds, so they're not included here. You might also notice that we do not have Subway and Fuel Rod included. As mentioned earlier, they did have separate MAG waivers, separate from the federal relief allocations. The relief that was provided to them is significantly more than what would be allocated through Crysta. Therefore, in this round, we did not include them to give those funds to additional struggling concessionaires. As I already mentioned, the FAA guidelines did allow the airport to recover a 2% admin fee for the airport or sponsor. We all agree again that it's important to allocate all available funds to the those struggling to recover. So we're not recommending that we take that 2%. I did read that the next round does not include any admin allocations, so we won't have to worry about that next time. Perhaps the most important note on this is that should any concessionaire or rental car operator become ineligible for these federal relief funds, we do have the option to remove their allocation and reallocate to other eligible concessionaires. So this means that if they do not reopen or extend hours per their contract or any other factors, these funds will be redistributed. Again, so if concessionaires do not open to meet passenger demands or maintain their hours of operations as approved by the RTAA, they will be considered ineligible, and the funds would be redistributed. This would benefit others by getting a larger share of the funds, but obviously it's a situation that we hope to avoid since our ultimate common goal is to have all stores open to benefit our passengers. A final note on this, allocations will be applied in the form of credits, not cutting checks to the operators. So the FAA does require that these relief funds go towards rents and fees due to the airport. So they'll actually be applied in the form of credits to concessionaire invoices. And so moving on to the next, oh, go ahead.
Trustee Carey.
A little more information on the 2%. Are we restricted in how that 2% could be allocated? It has to go solely for the purpose you had, or could it be used to support, say, the DB portion of our portfolio?
We did take a look at that. It would be, I believe, about $9,000 that we could have taken. That was actually a suggestion in conversations with Pam Brown from Parodies. She mentioned that that had been a consideration. Unfortunately, the guidance is not clear on that. So we thought it best to not get into a situation where that became an issue. It specifically says for administering the funds and the guidance doesn't include any additional information on that as far as we've seen.
Thank you.
So the next part of this, the MAG deferral for Parodies and SSP. As a reminder, the MAGs fully reinstated in March of this year. So we are suggesting this deferral begin March through December of 2021 as part of this consideration. Again, the deferral total is estimated at just under $490,000, but these funds are not waived essentially, but deferred and to be recovered by Crysta, SUE and ARPA, and any subsequent acts. We will be applying.
Can I ask a follow-up on that? So when those come in, then it would be an outright grant. So we've deferred them. So when these other federal funds come in, then they're essentially their rents would be waived.
Right. It's so a de facto waiver if we are applying these funds against it. Yes.
Okay.
And that is the guidance. Again, FAA guidance is specific to that. That's the intention of the funds, to cover the difference in rents and those
But
obligations.
that's only on the minimal annual guarantee. So we're paying rent.
Yes, they were paying percent of gross, in some cases space rent, but minimum annual guarantees as well. It has been required and clarified through the FAA that concessionaires who did not have a MAG abatement are still, or if they do not have a MAG abatement per their agreement, they are still entitled the allocated funds for them, even if they were percent of gross only and not MAG. But it is the intention that it would first recover any differences in their fees versus their MAG obligation, or however their rent fee is structured per contract. So with that, the first round of Crysta, as we saw on the previous slide, would reduce the deferral here by almost 90,000. So it would bring this down to an estimated 400,000. Again, not knowing what the allocation will be in ARPA, that could very likely cover the rest of it. If, as part of this recommendation, any remaining amounts after applying the federal relief funds will be due to the RTA by the end of next fiscal year, which is June of 22, or if there are any excess funds through the federal relief allocations, it would be applied to the concessionaire accounts to use. With this too, a couple of our concessionaires have mentioned that once their MAG obligation is covered, whatever the difference is from their percent fees versus MAG, if federal relief funds exceed that amount, they would then disseminate any additional relief funds to their subtenants. So they could see a benefit there. As part of this, we're recommending that the relief from Summit Travel, which we will talk about on the next slide, be deducted from Parity's MAG obligation altogether. So the Summit Travel portion of this, again, in distributing the Crysta allocations, there was not a mechanism to allocate directly to subtenants. So we are recommending that a reduction of Summit Travel's concession fees to a flat 10%. As we already discussed, the authority has reduced Summit Travel's space rent obligation. Currently, it is 100% waived, originally through December of this year, but it has now been extended by President Griffin through the end of fiscal year 22 or June of 22.
A follow-up on this, the CARES funding itself. Could we use CARES funds is there anything prohibiting us to giving directly to subleases?
We're prohibited from using the CARES funds to cover anything but operational expenses. So the concessionaire revenues would not qualify under the guidance for the CARES Act.
Could we pay 100% of their rent with CARES Act money?
I do not know the answer to that question. I am just aware that it's operational expenses. I don't believe that falls into it, but I am not positive.
We know, Randy, because I think that's an important part of this conversation. I mean, we heard at the retreat, we're going to pay off debt. If I look at the guidelines and what CARES Act money is supposed to be used for, I don't understand why we're not using it if we have flexibility within those funds to help some of these subleases. And I'm sorry, I don't think one size fits all here, because we had some people who stayed open and some people who didn't, and we asked them to stay open and they lost a ton of money doing that. They were throwing out food. So I want to know, I get these other funds, but I want to know if we can use CARES Act funding to directly help with our concessionaires who were open during the pandemic, who suffered a loss. I'm having a real hard time when we asked them and they were here with no traffic to say, oh, we're going to defer your rent. Well, quite frankly, I don't think that's enough. And also considering the amount of CARES money that we got at this airport, and we're talking about paying down debt, I think we've got to look at how we can help our concessionaires. And we brought this up earlier. I mean, our small business folks who have done business in this airport for years, I think we should be trying to bend over backwards to help these people. And if we have flexibility and that money, I think we should help. I'm sorry, that's just my 2 cents. I think we need to help our local businesses that have stayed open. So Randy, I'd like to know on the CARES Act funding, if we can give direct grants or waive rents.
There's the CARES Act. Let's keep in mind these are federal funds and they
Mhm.
come with strings attached. In terms of how we use that money, we cannot use it to offset revenue. We cannot use it to offset our revenues, period. We can use our own funds to do whatever, use our own reserves. But in terms of CARES Act, it's strictly written into the guidelines that we cannot use it for lost revenues.
Okay, can we use the funds to directly assist those concessionaires?
Only to the extent it's been carved out for concession relief, as it has been for Crysta and probably for ARPA when those funds are released. So there's more money coming. Let's not forget that too. There's this final tranche of federal relief is right around the corner. Any day now, we're going to know what those amounts are. And then we're going to have a new allocation to add to the existing allocation for Crysta. So there's more money coming.
So we can use our own funds if we wanted to do something.
We wanted to write off our balance sheet reserves to offset a loss of revenue by waiving rents. That's your prerogative. It creates a hole in the budget, because we're planning for those revenues, but it down to a policy decision of the board of how to use our own RT.
So if we can use CARES to pay debt, where does our debt service payment come from? The general funds?
Yes, it does.
Okay, so there you go. So if we're going to use it, I mean, that was one of the recommendations you're giving, that it can come out of the general fund to pay debt service. Then why couldn't we use the general fund dollars to help our concessionaires?
Because it's strictly addressed by the federal guidelines that we can use CARES for debt service. We can use CARES for offsetting our operating expenses. We could use CARES for expenses associated with combating the spread of COVID. And we could use CARES for specific uses of concession relief, only to the extent that it's carved out the amount that you've seen on this allocation. That is the only direct relief we can do with CARES Act towards concessionaires.
I understand what I was saying, Randy, though. Theoretically, you're taking general fund money and paying the debt service. So if we can use general fund money to help our concessionaires, and we can use CARES Act to help pay for that debt service, then it seems like we're a win-win. So that was my point. Mr. CEO?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. And I just want to clarify that the reason we understand Congress specifically called out in Crysta and ARPA concessionaire relief is because in the CARES Act, it did not call it out. And so this question has been asked by airports across the country as to what can we do with these funds. And as Randy alluded to, there were specific uses identified And so we have followed that model. And so what you see in front of you, Crysta has moved very slowly. It was passed in December, and we are still trying to get the grant funding, quite honestly, but we are finally getting there. ARPA is moving hopefully quicker. We have the frequently asked questions, which is an important step that outlines for us how we can use the ARPA funds. We will also hopefully get our number in the not too distant future. And like I mentioned, we believe the ARPA number, I think it was 800 million that Congress allocated for concessionaire relief. And we think they will exclude rental cars. It is going to be a huge relief package for concessionaires in the terminal building. Back to your original point, yes, we can use our funds, non-CARES funds, for any legal purpose, if you will. So can we do more? We certainly can. This is the 5th package that we have done. I think we'll have a good strategic and philosophical debate about what should we be doing at this point, given that our traffic is back to 90 to 100% this summer. But we are going to have to be continuing in this conversation, because we will be bringing you, I think, as Alex or Randy mentioned, no later than August, hopefully, our ARPA plan. That what are we doing with all of these funds? How does the waterfall of funding go through our prime concessionaires, SSP, Parodies, down to their subtenants, their ACDBEs? And then we'll decide, should we do more? Should we put more of our own money in play? And take a hole for a while? I mean, all of those things are fair game and absolutely on the table for conversation, for sure.
Darren, just for clarification, so would you say August then is the actual month where we will know exactly how much money everyone's going to receive, and we can look at it as a whole total picture? Or is there another round coming behind that? Or is that really the final date that the government has set?
Well, they originally, I think, said we'd know, they passed this in March, we would know data in April or May. Airports around the country are still waiting for their numbers. Like Shauna mentioned this morning, FAA released the frequently asked questions, but they did not release the actual allocations. We understand there is a new formula that's being applied. Airports really can't guess as to what they may get. There's a difference between large hub airport allocations and small hub airport allocations. We're not sure how they're going to slice it all up. So I would say we hope in June. They keep telling us it's this week, it's next week. I hope by the end of June we know, and then our team will pivot to, like every other airport, figuring out what does that mean for us. Here's our number. Here's the concessionaire number specific. What are we going to do with that, along with other funding that we will receive through ARPA, non-concessionaire relief, like the CARES Act funding. So we have a lot of questions to still answer on how to put these funds to their highest and best use and to help our tenant community. But I think we really do need to know what that number is going to be, and then we can start working the math from there. But I sincerely hope it's August. If it takes longer, it's only because the FAA is really struggling to answer all of the questions of how these funds can be used. This is a new game for them as well. And each one of these bills has provided them different rules. And so they are managing so much money now through the same group of 3 people in Phoenix is who we deal with. In addition to all of our normal AIP funding, they're managing CARES Act, Crysta, and now ARPA, and they are overwhelmed, in all honesty.
Trustee Jay, and we do have public comment as well.
Okay, so Judge Farrell, what you're basically saying is that our debt service, if is X, you would take that money, funnel it to concessionaires, use CARES Act to replace it. So it's a net zero theoretically to us.
Of course, in the
Yeah.
CARES Act, the premise between that is a policy decision. I'm sorry, not a staff decision, where we direct those funds. And I'm just frustrated because I think we should help the people who kept the airport open, who lost revenue. And I don't think it's trickling down, in my mind, just my opinion, I think it's a board policy decision. How much do we have left from the CARES Act funding?
Combining the CARES Act allocation and the Crysta, comparing, just doing some rough math in my head, we have about 9 million of actual allocation that we haven't drawn, although in the current year budget, we're anticipating another 11 million to be drawn. And as we discussed at the board retreat and showed you our forecast, we intend to use every dollar within the 4-year period of each.
Want to go to public comment?
Yes.
Lori, we have some public comment.
Yes, Patrick Wallace wishes to speak.
Hey, Mr. Wallace, you're up.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. First of all, yeoman's work to Shauna for putting that PowerPoint together. I hope one thing the trust has figured out very quickly, there is a lot to unpack in that PowerPoint presentation that Shauna made, okay? And I give her credit for putting the best possible light on that she can. I only have a couple minutes, so I'm only going to address the most glaring, but hopefully by now, and I give the trust members credit because you have nailed it in regard to why don't we just do this? I will tell you 90% of North American airports have done exactly what you just proposed. So let me start there. Thank you for that. Second, let me read to you from the April 4th FAA guidance on how an airport may use CARES Act money to help concessions. And this is a direct quote I'm reading from the document. Rent abatement, minimum annual guarantee. A decision to abate rent, not defer, as we talked about in the PowerPoint, a decision to abate rent, including minimum annual guarantees and also encompassing fees, is a local decision. Rent abatement should be tied to the changed circumstances caused by the public health emergency and done in accordance with grant assurances 22 and 24, as well as related statutes.
Patrick, if you could send me that information, because that's what I've been asking. I would like to see that provision of the CARES Act. So if you have that, what do you have a subsection on that?
It's under the bolded section that's called rent abatement / minimum annual guarantee, and it's on page 3 of the FAA guidance.
Thank you.
But yes, I
will
will
give you more time because I'm sure there's going to be questions. I'm sorry that I interrupted. Proceed.
If a sponsor or airport tenant, whether aeronautical or non-aeronautical, desires to renegotiate rent, a reasonable basis for such action might be established if the underlying basis for such rent has temporarily declined or materially altered due to COVID-19. In such circumstances, the offer of accommodation in the form of rent abatement is not barred by the grant assurances as long as it is reasonable under the circumstances and reflects the decline in fair market value, loss of services, and or changes to volume of traffic and the economy of collection. Sponsors considering such relief, i.e. airports considering such relief, are encouraged to consider the business situation of the tenant, the changed circumstances created by the public health emergency, the desirability of having solvent tenants that can resume normal operations when the emergency ends. And it goes on and on and on, but that gets to the heart of the matter. Yes, the CARES Act money can be used to save your concessionaires without question. So there are, I could have counterpoints to the many points that have been covered, but you know, that in and of itself is a huge discrepancy. And it's the reason why I'm suggesting that it's very difficult in 3 minutes to try to present a counterpoint that makes sense to everybody when it is such a complicated matter. We don't really have a problem with Crysta or with ARPA because FAA has been so specific how these funds must be allocated. That was not true of CARES. So in the end, we will be fine in 2021 and 2022, most likely. The problem is all the deferred rents from 2020 are going to act as double rent in 2021, because if you just defer them, I'm never going to have those people back that I would have had in 2020 that would have helped me pay that rent. You can defer them till the cows come home, but the cows are coming one of these days. And when they do, I'm going to pay double rent in whatever year those cows come home. And so that's why it is important to use the CARES
Patrick,
money.
so I'll go ahead and ask you a question. And since your public time is up, just ask you a question to proceed. So go ahead. If you could wrap up in like 60 seconds, that'd be great.
Well, yeah, that's fine. And I'll turn it over to Pam. I've taken more time than I should, but my point would be there is a lot to unpack here, and you can't do it in one of these, 3 minutes. You saw how long it took Shauna to go through her PowerPoint. I could do the counterpoint to that, and it would take me 45 minutes to get through it too. And it would give you 180 degree to up to a 360 degree picture of what's really going on and why it is so critical that concessions need help for 2020 from the CARES Act money. So anyway, I'll close with that.
Okay, thank you, Patrick. And we have another public comment, Lori?
I don't know if Pamela Brown would like to speak.
Yes, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Good morning, Pamela.
Good morning, thank you. Madam Chair, trustees, President Griffin and staff very much. I'll apologize in advance. There's some construction going on outside and that's part of the glamour of working from home. But thank you again for your time and the opportunity. I know that Ms. Martin had a conflict this morning and I'm not sure whether Ms. Matthews is still on. They are presently operating full-time, 7 days a week, about 14 to 16, sometimes more hours a day with one employee. So they are personally working 10 and 12-hour shifts 7 days a week. So while I don't speak for Aileen and Bernice, I'd like to speak a little bit to our relationship with Travelers Gifts and the contractual structure of our concessions agreements. Our agreement with Travelers is a sublease. They are independent operators who have taken full responsibility for their operations, their business, operationally and financially, for 30 years now that we've worked together. They're established members of the airport community, and the community at large have been reliable operators and outstanding supportive partners to us. When I offered to defer their portion of the rent, there's percent rents that rolls up through our agreement, they declined because they didn't want to end up owing it later. And that's just representative of the kind of people they are and the kind of tenants they've been for us for 30 years and for the airport as well through that. From the onset of COVID, Parady's committed to keeping at least one store open every day in every one of our airports to serve not only the few passengers we saw, but the airport employees who were still showing up to work. It didn't matter if a flight had 6 people on it. I was on a flight that had 4 people on it. But they still have to have the same number of ground crew and flight crew and everybody else to support those flights. Unlike many others, Parady's made a conscious decision that was going to cost us more money in order to stay open, to serve our airport partners and save jobs and do the right thing. We were the first to roll out a comprehensive health and safety program with PPE, safe distancing, and plexiglass. We didn't wait for federal money or airport support to do that. We paid our frontline associates and in-terminal managers a pay differential in recognition of the added burdens, time, cost, and stress of working in a COVID environment, especially early on when there were so many unknowns. We expanded our offering, PPE, additional snacks, grab and go at our Vino location, anything we could do to help fill the gap. Shauna and the team were so supportive of us operationally during those days. We have to give a shout out to them as well. Travelers followed in a similar fashion after being closed for just a few weeks. We also made the commitment to report our sales and pay our percentage rents in a timely fashion, unlike many other airport concessionaires across the country and the industry. At the same time, we did make the case to our airports to abate the difference between those percentage rents and our minimum guarantees, which we refer to as a MAG. Those were set long before COVID and based upon the record-setting passenger traffic we saw in 2019. It was a very different world in March of 2020, when in our first 3 months of operation, we paid more in MAG than our gross sales. Parady's sublease with Travelers doesn't call for a minimum rent, but their sales percentage rents do roll up to our gross and therefore drive about 20% of our annual minimum rent, which is over $900,000. We cover this because it's never frankly been a concern. They were a small business. We didn't want the added burden on them, but through the ebb and flow of passenger traffic, it consistently allowed our combined performance to cover the minimum until COVID hit. So I'd like to cover just a couple of things, and I'll try to really shorten this, about the rent relief that Parady's and Travelers were granted going back to 2020. We were granted a 3-month deferral, April, May, and June. Percent rents were still due, and we have since paid those deferrals in full as called for. Over those early months, staff maintained the position, the policy was set that there would be no abatement of the MAG differential, merely deferrals. Though we later learned that other terminal concessionaires had MAG relief provisions in their contracts and were granted full relief for a full year, the largest totaling approximately $1 million. The August 2020 MAG relief to small and regional concessionaires didn't apply to Parady's, but Travelers did get a 50% reduction in their storage and office space, which came to about $460 a month. And as Shauna mentioned, has since been taken to the full storage and office rent, which is about $930 now, I think. Keep in mind that over the past, since COVID hit, they've paid over $100,000 in percent rent. Following Mr. Griffin's appointment and ongoing pleas for relief from minimum rents, in September, staff developed a plan that provided rent relief totaling $150,000, which covered the difference between our MAG and the percent rents we paid for a little over 3 months. And we very, very much appreciate that. But it does seem unbalanced given the full relief that comparable concessionaires received, and who will also fully participate in the Crysta funds. Since the onset of the COVID pandemic, Parady's has paid over $500,000 in minimum rent, over and above the $150,000 in rent relief, and $400,000 we and Summit have paid in percent rents. So that's approximately $1 million. Oh, I'm sorry.
Pam, I'm sorry, you're over time for a public comment.
That's
but
fine.
Me personally, I think there's so much more information that, and maybe we need a workshop or some, because I don't have enough information to make a decision personally. And I don't know if these other funds that we're getting can help with, so I think we need to see the totality of what we're looking at here. And if there's abatements and some, I mean, because I'm in favor of, a deferral is, you got to catch up on that for when no fault of their own got shut down. I just think we need the entire, I don't feel that I have all the information today. So if we delay this decision, is that going to have I certainly don't want to impact our concessionaires, but can we I think we need more information. I'm not comfortable today without getting more information on the impacts.
Madam Chair, may I say something? I said this on Tuesday as well, and I'll say it again here. I really think that we should approve what we have on the table today so that we can get something in place, even if it's not enough, something immediately for them. And then we should come back when we have more information on the new guidelines and the additional funds, and we should come back and work on something in addition to what we put through today. But I would hate to not get Summit their zero rent. And I don't, you know what I mean? I feel like we should at least give them this and then keep working.
Right.
That would be my personal opinion.
I agree.
Agree.
I'd like to hear from the public commenters on that, the concessionaires, if what they feel about that. If we could move forward today and then bring this back, I'm committed to bringing it back the very next meeting So it's not waiting. So Patrick, we move forward today and then keep looking.
I'll go ahead and speak up. I don't know if Patrick's got his mic on. This is Pam, but yes, there is absolutely no harm, and we are very appreciative of the airport following through on the Crysta and ARPA funds for us.
This is Patrick. I couldn't agree more. There's certainly no harm in that. And we do not think for a moment that you are not serious to try to understand all of the detail that goes into these decisions. And we very much appreciate that. Thank you.
And I do want to say, Shauna, I do appreciate everything that staff has done. This is nothing. I think it's just a policy call with this board is how much relief we want to do. So you haven't done anything wrong. I appreciate you working very much with the concessionaires. I just think for it to come back to the board and we need to decide what that amount is, that allocation to give our concessionaires some relief. So if I could get a motion from the board and also to bring it back next month. Trustee Rose?
Move to approve.
I'll second that.
Hey, we have a motion to approve from trustee Rose, second by trustee Janoli. Trustee Sperber, did you have any comments? Okay, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. And just, I think that was a good point with the Martins. We have a shortage right now of staff. So I think we're going to have to be diligent and probably reaching out to our concessionaires because I think everyone's struggling right now with employees. So I really want to hear from them as well when we can.
Madam Chair.
I promise our public comment folks, Pamela and I'm sorry, I can't remember his name, that I'm going to, Patrick, sorry, that I will go upstairs and spend money as soon as I check in for my flight this afternoon.
All right, thank you.
There you go. Did you buy me something?
Thank you.
And I will buy something for trustee Jay and bring it back to him. I know he likes fuzzy slippers. and things
Yeah,
like
there
that.
you go. Very good.
All right, thanks, trustee Chaplin.
Thank you, Shauna.
Good job.
Thank you. All right, item number 10, Mr. Griffin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Lori, can you bring the slide up for me? Okay, by way of update, Madam Chair and the board, I do have some things to report for Public Safety CEO this month. Slide 2, please. Okay, thank you. So just by way of update, one of the big things going on right now in public safety are recruitments. We have vacancies across the department, quite honestly, and just stay on that slide, please. And it is a small number of applicants. Like we hear everywhere, labor shortage is striking every kind of workforce. So anyways, I'll just wing it. I've got it in my head anyways. So as you all know, I hired Chris Jensen as our new Chief Operations and Public Safety Officer. Chris is really focusing on training, both with the individual chiefs and AirCom, as well as creating training plans across the division, which is great to see. On the training topic, last week, our police department did a active shooter training inside these administrative areas. So no real bullets were used, but great opportunity for them to get into an office environment and do some sort of, training what it would be like if we had an active shooter situation inside our workspaces. So really great for them. Bid specifications are being established for our police vehicles that the board approved as part of the next budget. So thank you for that. We're still hoping to put those not requests, but purchase orders in August when the dealership has indicated they can move forward with them. We all see what's happening with the vehicle population right now. It's a challenge for dealers to get cars. We don't really know if the end of the year is still a good timeline, but it's important that we're clear on what sort of details we need in our vehicles. And so we will have our part ready, and then we'll go start working with the dealers. I would think as vehicle production lines come back online, the public safety vehicles will have a very high priority across the country, quite frankly. So I think we will be in good stead in that regard. I wanted to mention that we are taking a more active role in the air races this year from an emergency services standpoint. This was at the request of the Reno Air Races and the city of Reno, who, as you are all probably familiar with, very stretched in terms of their staffing levels, their equipment, and being able, and their funding levels in terms of all the area they're trying to cover. The air races are a burden on them. And so we are stepping up with additional vehicles, additional firefighter. Our chief will be there. The Nevada Air National Guard is also stepping up, and they are sending additional equipment. So between our two organizations, we have a much more aggressive posture there that provides a lot of relief to the city of Reno, and also saves the air races money, quite frankly, because the cost structure is different. You don't have to pay for the Nevada Air National Guard, and we are already there anyways. So our new chief is very eager and willing to take this role on. So we're doing that. And I also wanted to mention that after waiting so long to get a Type 1 engine, we now have two in the fire station. If you go to the next slide, our chief was able to get a Type 1 apparatus that was being surplus by Truckee Meadows Fire Protection District. And for $1, he was able to acquire this. No fault of the board in what we spent. This is a reserve, so that we have one truck that's always on the line ready to go, and then one that we can train on. And if you have a mechanical failure on our frontline vehicle, we have another Type 1. It's fully equipped. We'll get our logo on it. I think we'll just leave it red for now because we don't need to go run out and paint this thing. It actually looks really good. But I just wanted the board to know that now we've got two of these. Huge thank you to the Truckee Meadows partners. Our new fire chief, Dale Carnes, is doing a great job in building relationships around the region. And this is just a quick example of that's something that might not have been possible before. And so they are excited to have yet another new piece of equipment. So Madam Chair, that completes my public safety report for this month. Thank you.
And I just want to thank our CEO. I think the air races and just all you've been doing, and our chief. So thank you for the collaboration and getting that done and finding a solution. Appreciate it.
Absolutely, Madam Chair.
So any other comments from the board? Future agenda items?
Just Madam Chair, I have one comment, board comment, if I could.
Absolutely.
I just want to express my thanks to Mr. Caroselli one more time, and just let him know how much his friendship's meant to me in the last 4 years. And as a newbie 4 years ago, we sat next to each other, and every once in a while we pass notes, but it's always about the business at hand. So I just want to let you know that we're not talking about, who's cuter at the table or something like that. Anyway, I just want to thank Nat for being, so passionate and so great to work with. Thank you.
I would just want to echo that too. I met Nat early on before I got appointed to the board, and he's always been helpful to me as well, and appreciate everything he's done. And I remember you walking around the halls trying to get that extra money for air service back in the day in the legislature. So thanks.
Yeah, Ken, I'd like
Please,
to say
Barry.
thank you, Nat, and ditto on those things. Thank you, my friend.
Madam Chair, could we put something on the agenda regarding maybe allowing the concessionaires an opportunity to speak or present something so that we can get more information and give them more than 3 minutes? Would that be possible? And I also would like to thank Nat for his service.
Yeah, and if we could agendize that, so maybe we give them time to present the concessionaires, so they're not restricted by by the 3 minutes. I think that's a great idea. So any other, and then if we could get that information on the CARES Act emailed to us, that provision, it'd be good for the board to see. Trustee Jay?
We are going to do the cyber complete update, not somewhat focusing on insurance, but more so I want to know what level we have, some scenarios, like if we were to get attacked, what would happen? How does our backup systems work? Things like that, just a real in-depth, because you're absolutely right. After reading the meat processing company, the pipeline, and everything else, I think we need to be very proactive on this.
Yeah, and that may be something in closed session, safety issues. So I'm not sure, legal may want to.
Sure, absolutely.
So, and Marty, IT, we may want to, that may be something for safety reasons. So, and look at that. Mr. Caroselli, I think we're going on to our meeting now. Oh, I'm sorry. Upcoming meetings, and I'm sorry. Item number 12, public comment. Any other comments?
No more public comment.
Okay. And we're adjourned.
Session.
We have a,
Yeah.
yes.
When are we starting? Are we starting right away? or-
Yeah, we need
do
to
a quick
start.
bathroom break.
Yeah, quick back.
What?
Yep.
Yeah, I need a break.
Holding it.
So are we coming back to this? Do you want us?
Okay, you know what? It did. It did.
We
We,
finally found a plug.
the power strip wasn't plugged in.
I knew.
Fun. I was thinking about.
Yeah, I was like.
Or the like the dusty rose color. If I have
Right.
It's for Spanish Spring.
No, I started thinking.
Did it
So, yeah, I got my twins graduating, and then her daughter is a senior graduating.
Who knows?
And they graduated a week apart.
I got
So
mine
my
right
two
where
graduated
I,
Monday.
you need to plug.
Use until I leave, but
This one on. This one is.
And I'm moving from my house this weekend. So
when you got
I'm going to her place. It's just.
Well, I'm sure that's what they were.
That was me
kind
last
of.
night. Trying to get my kids.
Are you leaving? Are you going? Or are we going someplace else?
Same time.
Or even if.
I could be
Are
wrong.
we
I just
investing
assumed.
in
got a hard stop here.
infrastructure?
I
The general mind doesn't. And Darren's telling me I have to disconnect, and I've
Right.
never done that.
So
in
just,
17
I mean,
years,
this,
so,
one,
you know.
you know,